My name's Joel Embiid, and I had just turned 17 when my world flipped on its head. If you had looked at my family from the outside, you might have thought we were doing just fine. Dad worked long hours and kept the bills paid. Mom stayed home, and we had a little sister named Amy. She was 5 years old, and I adored her more than anything. Dad managed a major store chain for a company that originally belonged to my mom's mother. Yeah, Grandma was the real powerhouse behind everything. She was a force of nature, someone who started small, just a couple laundromats at first, but grew her empire into a household brand producing all sorts of cleaning supplies. She was sharp, driven, and surprisingly kind beneath that iron-willed exterior. When she finally decided to retire, she handed the business offer to Mom. But Mom didn't want it, said it was too much responsibility. So Dad stepped up, took the reins of a company that wasn't even technically his. That was when the cracks started to show. I'll never forget the first time I realized things were falling apart. I was upstairs trying to finish a science assignment when I heard Mom screaming at Dad. It wasn't just a regular argument. Her voice was dripping with venom. "You're nothing but a loser, John," she shouted. "This is my house, my family's company. You should be thanking me every day for letting you run it." Her words stabbed through the walls. I just froze, textbook in my lap, listening. Things got even worse after that. They stopped talking unless it was to argue. Dad started coming home later, and when he was home, it was like he was walking on eggshells. I did my best to keep Amy distracted, building pillow forts, playing dress-up. But even at 5, she could tell something was wrong. She'd ask why Mommy was always mad. I never knew what to say. Then came the day that changed everything. I got home from school, dumped my backpack by the door, and saw Dad sitting in the living room with a suitcase. His eyes looked tired, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Dad?" My voice cracked as I stepped closer. He looked up, stood, and walked toward me with heavy steps. Then he pulled me into a hug so tight it nearly crushed me. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he whispered. "I can't stay here anymore. It's not good for anyone." I just froze in his arms. "What about Amy? What about me?" He pulled back, blinking fast like he didn't want to cry in front of me. "I love you both more than anything. Never forget that. But sometimes love just isn't enough." He kissed my forehead, then turned to Amy, who had wandered into the room, her eyes wide and confused. He knelt in front of her and wrapped her in his arms. "Be good for your big brother, okay, Pumpkin?" Then, just like that, he stood up, walked out the door, and was gone. The sound of it closing behind him echoed through the house like the final chapter of something I never wanted to end. Mom came home about an hour later. I was still standing in the same spot. When I told her what happened, she didn't even flinch, didn't act surprised. "Good riddance," she muttered, tossing her purse on the counter. "Mom," I snapped, "how can you say that?" She turned to me, eyes like cold steel. "Your father cheated on me, Joel, multiple times. I tolerated it for too long." I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know if it was true. All I knew was that the house felt emptier than ever. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Mom talking on the phone in her room. She was laughing. Genuinely laughing. I hadn't heard that sound in months. I didn't know who she was talking to. I didn't care. I just stared at the ceiling, wondering when things had gone so wrong. And then, just as I started getting used to life without Dad, Mom hit us with another bombshell. She waited until breakfast. Amy was eating cereal, and I was half asleep, barely processing anything. Then she said it. "Kids," she said with an odd smile, "I have some news. I'm getting married." I nearly spit out my juice. "What?" "His name is Robert," she said. "We've known each other for a while. Sometimes true love comes when you least expect it, Joel. You'll understand when you're older." Robert moved in a week later. He wasn't awful. He was tall, conventionally attractive, and friendly enough on the surface. He played with Amy, helped her with her drawings, but with me, it was like I didn't exist. Things at the company changed too. After Dad left, Mom suddenly decided to get involved, bringing Robert along for the ride. They spent long hours in her home office, heads together, whispering and laughing like they were running some secret empire. I tried to keep my distance. I had school, my friends, and my own dreams. But it was getting harder to ignore the way they made me feel like I was just extra, like I didn't belong in my own house. Then one night, Mom dropped the next bomb. "We're moving," she said casually as we were eating dinner. "Moving? To another city. We're opening a new branch of the business. It's a huge opportunity." I blinked. "Okay, but what about school? Exams?" Mom smiled in that tight way she always did when she thought she was being generous. Robert and I talked it over. We think it might be best if you stay here. The new house won't have a lot of space, and transferring schools now wouldn't make sense. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I'm just not coming with you? She waved her fork like I was being dramatic. You'll stay with Grandma. She's already agreed. Don't make this difficult, Joel. I stormed out of the kitchen before I lost it completely, slammed my bedroom door and curled up on the bed, fists clenched, tears burning in my eyes. When did I become a burden to my own mother? The next few weeks were a blur. Boxes, movers, whispered conversations behind closed doors. Amy cried when she had to say goodbye to her room. I helped her pack, trying not to show how broken I felt inside. Will you come visit, Joel? She asked, her little voice trembling. I hugged her tight. Of course I will. You're stuck with me, remember? When they left, I stood on the porch with Grandma, watching the car disappear down the street. Mom gave me a weak hug, Robert offered a nod, and Amy waved with tears in her eyes. Then they were gone. Living with Grandma wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. In fact, it felt more like healing. She gave me space when I needed it, and somehow always knew when to step in with a cup of tea and a soft hand on my shoulder. But it wasn't home. I missed Amy, missed Dad, missed how life used to feel, even if it wasn't perfect. That sense of normalcy was gone, replaced by quiet evenings and questions that kept me up at night. On the morning of my 18th birthday, I woke up feeling off. It should have been exciting, right? But I felt numb, like I was floating in a life I hadn't really chosen. Mom called, of course. Her voice was overly cheerful, like she was reading from a script. Happy birthday, sweetie. I'm sorry we can't be there. Work is just insane right now, but we'll celebrate when we visit next month, okay? I didn't believe her. I hadn't seen them once since they moved, but I mumbled the usual, "Sounds great, Mom," and hung up. Grandma must have sensed my mood because she went all out that day. She let me invite a couple friends over, ordered my favorite food, and even baked a chocolate cake from scratch. For a few precious hours, I laughed like the old Joel again. The next morning, she called me into her home office. I walked in, heart thudding. She looked so serious that my mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. Was she going to kick me out? Was something wrong with Dad or Amy? Sit down, Joel, she said, nodding toward the chair across from her. I obeyed. Then, to my utter shock, she pulled out a small blue folder and handed it to me. Happy birthday, she said softly. Open it. I did, and my mouth dropped open. Grandma, is this? She smiled. Yes, the company is yours now. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. The documents were real, signed, notarized, all of it. But Mom and Robert, they're running one of the branches, she interrupted, her tone cool. But the heart of the company, that belongs to you now. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I was 18 and suddenly responsible for a multi-million-dollar business. Why me? I asked, barely above a whisper. She leaned across the desk and placed her hand over mine. Because I see something in you, Joel. You're grounded, smart, compassionate, and unlike your mother, I know you'll put the business and the people who work there first, not your ego. I sat there stunned until she spoke again. I've got one more piece of advice for you, and I want you to listen carefully. I leaned in. Call your father. Talk to him. There's more to that divorce story than you know. It took me a week to gather the courage, but I finally texted him, asking if he'd meet me at the little cafe near the old park. When I walked in and saw him sitting at the back table, I almost lost it. He looked older, thinner, a little grayer, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. We hugged long and hard, then we sat down. I told him everything, about the move, Grandma's gift, Mom's sudden marriage, how invisible I felt. He listened, really listened, and when I was done, he let out a deep breath. Joel, he said, there's something I need you to know about the divorce. He stared at his hands for a second before looking up. Your mother, she never really respected me. No matter how hard I worked, she treated me like I was beneath her. Constant insults, threats, manipulation. After one horrible fight, I got drunk and made a terrible mistake. I swallowed hard. I cheated on her, just once. I hated myself for it, but she used it to destroy me, threatened lawsuits, said I had to leave everything behind or she'd take it all and ruin me publicly. I couldn't believe it. The woman who claimed to be the victim had orchestrated the entire fallout. Why didn't you fight it? I asked. He looked me in the eye, his voice thick with emotion. Because of you and Amy. I didn't want either of you dragged through the mud. I reached across the table and grabbed his hand. Thank you for telling me, and "There's something I need to ask." He raised an eyebrow. "Would you help me with the company as a consultant?" The smile that lit up his face said everything I needed to know. The next few months were a blur. Between studying for finals and learning the ropes of the business, I barely had time to breathe. But every day, Dad and I talked, sometimes by phone, sometimes over coffee. Slowly, we started rebuilding. Graduation day came. I stood on stage with my diploma, scanning the crowd. Grandma sat front row, clapping so hard I thought her hands might fall off. Mom and Robert? Not even a text. But I was done expecting anything from them. That summer, with college applications flying out the door, I dove headfirst into business. Grandma was my biggest cheerleader. When I got the email saying I'd earned a full-ride scholarship, we screamed together like kids. "I knew you could do it, Joel," she beamed. I chose business management naturally. It made sense. I had a company now, a future I was starting to believe in. To celebrate, Grandma planned a tiny party. Just us, some takeout from my favorite Thai place, and sparkling cider because she refused to let me drink champagne. We were halfway through the pad Thai when the doorbell rang. I got up, opened it, and froze. There they were, Mom and Robert, both looking annoyed and impatient, like we had somehow inconvenienced them by existing. Before I could speak, they pushed past me into the house. "Mother," Mom barked, "we need to talk now." They ignored me completely. Didn't ask about school. Didn't mention my scholarship. It was like I was invisible again. "Why can't we access the main company accounts?" she demanded. "And why are you blocking transfers to our branch?" Robert chimed in. Grandma stood, her back straight, voice calm. "Because that's not your call anymore, Helen. The company belongs to Joel now." Dead silence. Mom blinked, then smiled. Sweet fake. "Joel, sweetheart, we've missed you. Why don't you come live with us?" She stepped forward, arms out like she expected me to hug her. I stepped back. "I'm good, Mom. I have everything I need here." "Well," she said, trying again, "we could move back, into our old house, rebuild like before." I shook my head. "It's not about the house, it's about how you treated us." Her smile cracked. Then I dropped the question that had haunted me for months. "Why did you really divorce Dad?" She stammered. "He cheated multiple times, abandoned us." "That's not true," I said. "He told me everything. He cheated once because of how you treated him. You kicked him out, and he's been paying alimony every month." Her face twisted. Rage, embarrassment, desperation. "You ungrateful little brat," she snapped. "Everything here exists because of me." Grandma stepped in then, her voice cool as ice. "Enough! The house, the company, they were mine. I gave them to Joel because I trust him. You need to leave." Robert opened his mouth to protest, but one look from Grandma shut him up. They left without another word. As the door closed, I felt free. Hollow, yes, but free. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices drifting up from the kitchen. I tiptoed downstairs, curious and still a little on edge from the previous night. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. Dad was sitting at the table with Grandma, sipping coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. Their conversation was quiet but intense. I stepped into the room and both of them looked up. "Morning," I said cautiously. Grandma motioned for me to sit. "Come join us. We were just talking about Amy." My chest tightened. "What about her?" Grandma looked at me with her no-nonsense expression, the one she used when something serious was coming. "Your mom isn't in the best position to care for her right now. I've suggested your father seek custody." I stared at her, barely able to speak. "You mean Amy could come live with him? Here?" Dad nodded, his face a mix of determination and worry. "Yeah, it won't be easy, Joel, but I think it's time. Amy deserves better." Without thinking, I stood up and threw my arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you for trying." Over the next few weeks, life settled into a strange new rhythm. I started college classes and focused hard, burying myself in business textbooks and late-night Zoom meetings with the company's financial team. Grandma continued to guide me like the rock she always had been, and Dad dropped by often to help strategize. Then one day, Grandma gathered us in her office again. She looked more serious than I'd ever seen her. "The private investigator sent in his report," she said. My stomach dropped. "It's worse than we imagined," she continued. "Your mother has been lying for a very long time. The affair with Robert started years ago, while she was still married to your father." Dad looked down, silent, his jaw clenched. "She used that one-time mistake against him while hiding a whole relationship of her own," Grandma added. "There are hotel records, receipts for luxury gifts, photos, but that's not the worst part." She pulled out a second folder and placed it on the table. Robert is a con man, a real professional. He has a history of getting involved with wealthy women, manipulating them into shifting assets, and then disappearing with the money. My head spun. So about when they tried to move company capital? Exactly, Grandma said. They were going to drain it, every cent. The air in the room turned heavy. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Then came the next inevitable step. We need to confront your mother with this, Grandma said. We scheduled the meeting the following afternoon. Mom showed up flustered and impatient, her arms crossed the moment she walked through the door. When she saw Dad sitting in the living room, her expression soured instantly. Why is he here? She asked. Grandma didn't waste time. She laid everything out. The affair, Robert's true identity, his past fraud cases, the plan to embezzle funds. Mom tried to laugh it off at first. This is ridiculous. Robert would never do something like that. Dad leaned forward. Helen, look at the evidence. This is who he is. You've been tricked. But Mom refused to listen. She stood up, her face red with fury. You're all just jealous. Jealous of what Robert and I have. You want to destroy me. Then she turned to me, her eyes narrowing. And you, she hissed. You think you're better than me now? You're a child playing boss. Don't act like you understand the world. I stood tall. I understand enough to know who I can trust. With that, she stormed out again, slamming the door behind her. The silence left behind felt different this time, not empty, more like cleansing. In the following months, we prepared for the custody battle. Dad filed the paperwork, and Grandma's lawyer took the lead. I kept my head down and studied, though my mind was always half distracted by worry for Amy. The custody hearing came fast. I insisted on going. I needed to be there, needed to see my sister safe again. The court process was slow and grueling. Mom's lawyer tried to spin a story about Dad being absent, uncaring. But we were ready. Dad had every receipt, every alimony payment. There were screenshots of calls and messages he had sent that were never returned. We had proof of stability, of love, of commitment. Then came the final nail, the private investigator's report. The courtroom went quiet as the judge read through it. Details of Robert's past schemes, financial statements showing attempts to transfer funds without authorization, evidence of neglect. My mother's eyes widened, her facade finally cracking. When the judge ruled in Dad's favor, granting him full custody of Amy, I felt a wave of emotions crash through me. Relief, sadness, vindication. As we walked out of the courthouse, Amy clung to Dad's hand, her little backpack bouncing behind her. I was just about to get in the car when Mom rushed over. This isn't over, she growled, her eyes wild. Grandma stepped between us. Oh, yes, it is. Go home, Helen. But the blows didn't stop for Mom. The court ordered her to pay child support. The reversal clearly blindsided her. She had always assumed she'd be the one receiving, not giving. I focused even harder on school, channeling everything into my degree and the company. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a certain grim satisfaction when the next piece of news came in. Robert had left her, just packed up and disappeared, taking a hefty chunk of her personal savings with him. Karma? Maybe. Or just a lesson long overdue. Then, on a chilly autumn evening, Dad called me. His voice was stiff, like he was trying to keep his cool. Your mother showed up at my place today. What? I froze. She said she wanted to reconcile, that she made a mistake, that she wanted us to be a family again. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part just sank. I didn't want this cycle to start again. What did you say? I asked quietly. I told her no, Dad replied. That ship sailed a long time ago. I won't put you or Amy through that again. A strange peace settled over me. Good, I said. We deserve better. Dad laughed softly on the other end. When did you get so wise, Joel? I smiled. I had a great teacher. After that call with Dad, I sat in silence for a long time. I stared at the framed photos on my desk. Amy grinning at the zoo, Dad holding me up at a baseball game, Grandma and me covered in flour after baking cookies. It hit me then. This was my family. Not the one I wished I had. Not the perfect picture I used to chase, but the one I had now, real, flawed, fiercely loyal. I threw myself into the work of juggling college life with managing the company. Weekdays were chaos, lectures, reports, phone calls, budgeting meetings. I barely slept sometimes, but weekends, they became sacred. Every Friday afternoon, I packed a bag and headed over to Dad's house, where Amy would practically launch herself at me the moment I stepped through the door. Joel! She'd squeal, hugging me like she hadn't seen me in years, not days. She was 10 now, all arms and legs and endless curiosity. She'd talk nonstop about her week, her teachers, her latest obsession with space or pandas or whatever books she'd devoured. Dad would usually be in the kitchen, apron on, cooking something comforting. "Just in time," he'd say, waving a spatula. We'd eat together, laugh, share stories. After Amy went to bed, Dad and I would huddle at the kitchen table, coffee mugs in hand, going over company numbers and future plans. It became our ritual. Familiar, safe. Sundays were for Grandma. She insisted on cooking enough food to feed a small army. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, her signature apple pie. We'd sit on the porch after lunch, the three of us, talking about everything and nothing. "I always knew you had it in you, Joel," she'd say, patting my hand. "You've got the heart of a leader and the patience of a saint." As graduation approached, I found myself reflecting more often on everything, what I'd lost, what I'd gained, who I used to be, who I was becoming. Dad kept his promise. He ran the company with integrity, guiding it through tricky transitions, while also mentoring me every step of the way. One evening, as we were reviewing financial forecasts, he looked up and said, "Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to hand over the reins." I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." There were still hard days. Nights when I'd wake up wondering if I was doing the right thing. If I could really live up to the trust Grandma had placed in me. If I could be what the company and my family needed. But every time I looked at Amy, beaming with her backpack slung over one shoulder, or Grandma offering a steaming cup of tea just when I needed it, or Dad calling to check on my class schedule like a proud coach, I knew the answer. We were doing it, together. A few weeks after I officially took over as CEO, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, from Mom. It was messy, apologetic in parts, defensive in others. She blamed Robert for everything but admitted she'd made mistakes. She said she missed Amy, said she wanted a second chance. I sat with it for a long time, stared at the words until they blurred. Then I folded it, put it in a drawer, and let it go. She'd made her choices, and we were finally free of the weight of them. My life now? It wasn't flashy. It wasn't the kind you'd see in movies. But it was mine, real, earned, rooted in people who stayed, who showed up, who loved without conditions. I walked across the stage at my college graduation with my head high. Dad whistled so loud I could hear him over the applause. Amy cried. Grandma brought roses, despite insisting she wouldn't. As the crowd cleared, we stood together for a picture, Dad on one side, Grandma on the other, Amy tugging at my sleeve, asking when we could get ice cream. And right there, in that moment, I knew. Everything that had happened, every tear, every betrayal, every goodbye, had led me to this. Not just a degree, not just a company, but a life worth living, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.